Dear learners, hello and welcome to today's session on Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development. I am delighted to have you with us as we delve into one of the most foundational and widely studied theories in the field of developmental psychology. Jean Piaget was a Swiss psychologist who significantly advanced the comprehension of children's cognitive development. Born in 1896, he began his career as a philosopher and biologist. Despite his prominence as a psychologist, he also conducted study on sparrows and mollusks. Piaget's contribution to psychology mostly stemmed from his observations of children's cognitive development. In the early stages of his career, Piaget assessed the IQ tests offered to children by Alfred Binet. Piaget observed that children of specific ages frequently provided similar incorrect responses. Based on these observations and subsequent interviews with children regarding their errors, he formulated a theory on the development of children's cognitive processes. A significant conclusion of his work is that children do not possess the same cognitive processes as adults. Children's cognitive processes evolve over time, adapt to their surroundings, and are refined by exposure to new information. Piaget additionally impacted psychology in various manners. He highlighted other research methodologies, including the clinical method. He utilized the subsequent research methodologies, naturalistic observation of play and dialogue among youngsters, including his own, conducting interviews with children. One of the most important theories in psychology is his cognitive development theory. According to this theory, the children go through a series of stages, each with its own set of cognitive functions. Piaget's ideas have had a significant impact on how people think about child development today. And his ideas still shape how we teach and carry out psychological research. Piaget's theory gives us a basic way to think about how children learn as they get older. His research changed how we think about cognitive development by showing that kids play an active role in making sense of what they go through. This theory aids researchers and teachers in learning a lot about how children's thinking changes as they get older. His theory is still very important in fields like education, parenting, and clinical practice, where it helps people come up with ways to help their minds grow. Piaget gave a strong explanation for how children learn and improve their reasoning skills by introducing ideas like schemas, assimilation, and accommodation. His theory changed the way we think about cognitive development in a deeper and more dynamic way. It had an impact on psychology, education, and other related fields. In general, Piaget's work changed the way we think about learning in childhood and is still and does so today in research and practice. Piaget's theory made a significant contribution to our knowledge of how children learn and think. His theory underlined that students actively explore and experiment to make sense of the world around them rather than being passive learners. His work continues to have an impact on fields including psychology, education, sociology, and even law. He was honored with honorary degrees and many awards around the world. Piaget's work ultimately changed the way professionals, parents, and educators view and react to the developmental needs and behaviors of children, having a lasting effect on educational methods. To appreciate the depth of Piaget's theory, it is essential to first understand the core concepts that underpin it. The first key concept is the schema. A schema is essentially a mental framework that helps individuals organize and interpret information. It is like a cognitive blueprint for understanding the world. As children grow and encounter new experiences, they constantly develop and refine these schemas. Next is assimilation, which involves taking in new information and fitting it into existing schemas. For example, if a young child has a schema for dogs and encounters a cow for the first time, they may initially call it a dog. This is assimilation in action, trying to make the new experience fit into a pre-existing mental framework. However, not all new information fits neatly into existing schemas. That's where accommodation comes in. When children realize that a cow is not a dog, they must modify their schema or create a new one. Accommodation allows them to adjust their thinking in light of new experiences. Tying assimilation and accommodation together is the process of equilibration. Equilibration refers to the internal drive to maintain cognitive balance. When children face a discrepancy between what they know and what they experience, a state called disequilibrium arises and they are motivated to resolve it, leading to the development of more complex schemas and ultimately cognitive growth. These concepts, schema, assimilation, accommodation, and equilibration, form the dynamic system through which cognitive development occurs. They explain how children actively build their understanding, not just through memorization but through real world engagement. Let's now turn our attention to Piaget's 4 stages of cognitive development, beginning with sensorimotor stage, which spans from birth to about 2 years. During this period, infants learn primarily through sensory experiences and motor interactions. Their cognitive development is tightly linked to physical exploration of the world. In the earliest months, infants rely on reflexes such as sucking, grasping. These involuntary responses are essential for survival and gradually give way to primary circular reactions, where babies repeat pleasurable actions catered on their own bodies, like thumb sucking. As they grow, infants begin to engage with their environment more intentionally. A major milestone in this stage is the development of object permanence, the understanding that objects continue to exist even when out of sight. This concept typically emerges around 8 to 12 months of age. For example, when a toy is hidden under a blanket, a baby with object permanence will attempt to retrieve it, showing that they understand it still exists. Infants also develop the ability to coordinate their sensory input with motor actions. They begin to purposefully reach for, manipulate, and explore objects, which enhances their understanding of cause and effect. Another critical development is goal-oriented behavior. Infants learn to act with intention, for instance, pulling a string to bring a toy closer or moving an obstacle to reach something they want. We also see the emergence of stranger anxiety and separation anxiety, which reflect growing emotional and cognitive awareness. These responses are linked to the infant's recognition of familiar versus unfamiliar individuals, to their attachment to caregivers. As the stage progresses, infants begin to develop schemas, mental representations of experience, people, and objects. They also engage in trial and error learning, experimenting to see the outcomes of different actions, such as dropping objects repeatedly to observe their fall. By the end of sensorimotor period, infants begin to demonstrate intentional behavior and basic communication skills, primarily through gestures, babbling, and imitation. They even begin to show social referencing, looking to caregivers to gauge how to respond to unfamiliar situations. Most importantly, they develop mental representation, enabling them to think about things that are not physically present. This development sets the foundation for the next stage of cognitive growth. The next phase is the preoperational stage, which extends from approximately 2 to 7 years of age. During this time, children make significant strides in symbolic thinking and language development, but their reasoning remains intuitive rather than logical. One of the most striking features of this stage is symbolic representation. Children use words, images, gestures to represent objects and events. This is vividly seen in pretend play. A child might use a stick as a sword or act out complex scenarios using dolls and toys. Despite this progress, children in preoperational stage are often egocentric. They find it difficult to see things from perspective other than their own. A classic example is Piaget's Three Mountains task, where a child is unable to describe what another person sees from a different vantage point. Another characteristic is animism, the tendency to attribute human emotions and qualities to inanimate objects. A child might believe a teddy bear feels sad or that moon is following them. Centration is also prominent. Children focus on one aspect of a situation and ignore others. For example, in conservation tasks involving liquid, they might think a taller glass has more water, even if volume hasn't changed. This relates to their lack of conservational limited understanding that quantity remains the same even when appearance changes. Yet, despite these limitations, the preoperational stage is crucial for the development of imagination, language, and foundational cognitive skills that prepare children for logical thought. Moving into the concrete operational stage, which spans from about 7 to 11 years, children begin to think more logically, but their reasoning is still grounded in concrete, tangible experiences. A major leap during this stage is development of logical operations. Children can now perform tasks like mathematical computations, classification, and ordering, especially when the objects involved are physically present. They show decentration, meaning they can consider multiple aspects of a problem simultaneously. For instance, they understand that a tall, narrow glass has a short, wide one may contain the same amount of liquid, demonstrating the concept of conservation. Children also develop reversibility, the understanding that actions can be undone. For example, if you flatten a ball of clay, they recognize it can be rolled back into original shape. In addition, they become skilled in classification or organizing objects by categories, seriation, arranging items in logical sequences such as by height, size, color. Another powerful development is transitivity, understanding relationships among elements. For instance, if A is taller than B and B is taller than C, they can deduce that A is taller than C. Overall, children in the concrete operational stage are far more capable of handling real-world tasks and solving practical problems, though they may still struggle with abstract or hypothetical scenarios. Finally, we reach the formal operational stage, which typically begins around age 12 and continues into adulthood. This stage marks the emergence of abstract thinking and advanced reasoning abilities. Individuals now possess the ability to think about ideas that are not tied to physical reality. They engage in abstract thinking, reasoning about moral dilemmas, hypothetical situations, and theoretical concepts like justice or freedom. A defining feature here is hypothetical deductive reasoning. Learners can form hypotheses, test them systematically, and draw logical conclusions. This mirrors the structure of scientific reasoning and supports problem solving in complex, unfamiliar situations. Propositional thought also develops the ability to evaluate logical relationships among statements without needing concrete reference. This is essential in fields such as mathematics, philosophy, critical analysis. Problem solving becomes systematic rather than trial and error. Individuals can approach multi-step challenges methodologically, weighing different variables and considering multiple outcomes. Another important development is metacognition, the ability to think about one's own thinking. Adolescents begin to reflect on how they learn, recognize their strengths, weaknesses, and adopt strategies to improve their understanding. This stage also brings a deepening of moral reasoning. Adolescents can now think in terms of universal principles and ethical values, aligning with the post-conventional level of moral development described by theorists like Lawrence Kohlberg. The former operational stage is therefore essential for higher order learning, academic success, personal growth, and civic engagement. Coming to the educational implications, Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development has had an ongoing influence on educational theory as well as practice. His ideas have changed how teachers think about how kids think and learn, which has affected how they design lessons, set up classrooms, and grade work. Piaget's hypothesis has important pedagogical consequences, which are as follows. Number 1. Developmentally appropriate practices. Piaget's theory emphasized that learning activities should be appropriate for the child's stage of development. Teachers should make exercises that are appropriate for the age of student and their level of cognitive readiness. This makes sure that children do not become too confused by things that are too hard or too easy, which helps them learn in meaningful way and improve their thinking. Number 2. scaffolding and the zone of proximal development ZPD. As we know, Vygotsky is more directly responsible for the idea of ZPD, but Piaget's constructivist ideas reinforce the idea of expanding on what you already know. Teachers can help students move from what is currently known to them to more sophisticated levels of thinking by using scaffolding tactics like guided questioning, modeling, and step-by-step instruction. This will improve learning outcomes within their ZPD. Number third, emphasis on hands-on experiential learning. One of the main ideas behind Piaget's theory is that children learn best when they actively explore and change their surroundings. This supports the use of concrete hands-on activities like experiments, models, and problem-solving assignments in schools. These activities let students build their understanding via direct experience and discovery. Then we have promotion of critical thinking and metacognitive skills. As pupils grow and learn, they get better at thinking abstractly, using logic and thinking about themselves. Teachers should make assignments that encourage higher order thinking, such as hypothesizing, analyzing, and assessing. This will help students become more independent and think for themselves. Then we have recognition of individual differences through differentiated instruction. Piaget suggested that all children go through the same phase of development. But teachers know that each student learns at their own rate and their own way. Piaget's insights necessitates the implementation of differentiated instruction that is customized to the cognitive profiles, interests, and strengths of students, as well as understanding of individual differences. Then we have inclusion of cultural relevance and diversity. Modern uses of cognitive development concepts underline how important it is to include cultural factors in learning. Teachers can make their lessons more inclusive and interesting by making them culturally responsive, which means they take into account students' backgrounds and life experiences. Number 7, assessment and constructive feedback. Insights from cognitive development theory inform the design of assessments that are more than evaluating outcomes. They serve as tools for learning and development. Educators can employ formative assessments to gauge students' cognitive progress, provide constructive feedback, and modify instructional approaches accordingly. This continuous feedback loop supports adaptive teaching and deeper understanding. To summarize Piaget's theory of cognitive development, it offers a foundational framework for understanding how individuals learn and think at different stages. Its implications for education are vast, encouraging learner-centered instruction, experiential learning, and developmentally sensitive approaches of teaching. By applying principles from cognitive development theory, educators can create dynamic, supportive, and inclusive environments that not only enhance academic performance but also cultivate lifelong learning competencies. Now coming to its criticism and limitations. While Jean Piaget's theory has profoundly influenced the field of developmental psychology and education, it has also been subject to various criticisms and identified limitations. Scholars and researchers have raised several concerns, particularly regarding its universality, applicability, and methodological scope. The major criticisms are outlined as follows. Number 1. Stage-based approach and rigid age boundaries. Piaget's theory conceptualizes cognitive development as occurring in fixed sequential stages, each tied to specific age ranges. However, empirical research indicates that cognitive development is often more continuous and fluid than Piaget suggested. Children may exhibit cognitive abilities from different stages simultaneously, and the progression is not always uniform across individuals. Then we have cultural and socio-economic limitations. A significant criticism of Piaget's research is its reliance on observations of children from Western middle-class backgrounds. As a result, the theory may lack cultural universality. It does not fully account for the influence of cultural practices, language, socio-economic status, and social environments that can shape cognitive development differently in diverse populations. Number 3. Underestimation of young children's capabilities. Piaget has been criticized for underestimating the cognitive abilities of infants and young children. Subsequent research using more refined methodologies has revealed that even young children can demonstrate sophisticated understanding in areas such as object permanence, number sense, causality, earlier than Piaget originally proposed. Number 4. Neglect of social and cultural influences. Piaget emphasized individual discovery and internal cognitive processes, often overlooking the significant role of social interaction, cultural tools, and guided learning in shaping cognition. Vygotsky, for instance, offered a more socially situated perspective, highlighting how learning is mediated by social relationships and cultural context. Number 5. Limited educational applications. Although Piaget's work has foundational value in educational theory, it offers relatively little in terms of direct instructional strategies or curricular design. Its broad abstract descriptions of developmental changes do not always translate easily into practical applications for teachers, particularly when addressing individual learner differences and diverse classroom needs. Number 6. Lack of attention to individual differences. Piaget's theory presents a universal model of development, often overlooking the vast individual differences among children. Factors such as intelligence, personality traits, learning styles, emotional development, and unique life experiences are not adequately considered within his stage-based framework. Despite its limitations, Piaget's theory remains a cornerstone in developmental psychology, providing a foundational understanding of how children construct knowledge through active engagement with their environment. However, recognizing its shortcomings allows for a more nuanced and holistic view of cognitive development, one that integrates cultural, social, individual factors to better understand how children think, learn, and grow. To wrap up, Jean Piaget's theory of cognitive development has significantly contributed to our understanding of how children think, learn, and acquire knowledge. His pioneering work highlighted the active role children play in constructing their understanding through interaction with their surroundings. Piaget proposed a series of developmental stages, each marked by distinct changes in reasoning and thought processes. Although widely influential, his theory has faced criticism, particularly for its rigid age related stages, cultural limitations, and underestimation of children's capabilities. Nonetheless, modern research has expanded upon Piaget's foundational ideas, providing deeper insights into cognitive development throughout the human lifespan. This is all for this session. Thank you for joining us and taking the time to deepen your understanding of this essential topic in educational psychology. Keep watching, keep learning, and continue exploring the powerful tools that shape education and human development.